Let's test GPT 5.4 together. It's probably one of the more confusing models, I must say. I really find it hard testing latest OpenAI models, is that quite often we see really big improvements in the benchmarks for some of the things that they measure. And I certainly like using the models myself as well for day-to-day coding. And then when we try and compare side by side and do some more kind of vibe comparisons with many other models, it's really hard to work out how they compare in a kind of fair way. So what we're going to be doing here today is that we're going to be looking at the different generations that we've got 5.4 medium in this case that we've generated in the code arena versus some of the previous generations we've done. So, so for example, in here we've got Golden Gate Bridge, and the idea here is that it's quite a complex prompt. You can see here on the right hand side, and we want to give it quite a lot of instructions to follow. There's like a small island, and it needs to be coherent, and it needs to be have these features and those features. And what we really want to see is, can it follow it one shot? Now, one shot is not everything. I know it's not the most important thing in life, but what we really want to get a feel for is like at a core level, if the model can't do this, then like what's the what are the limitations that the model has? And there are many different things influencing this, so it doesn't mean if the generation is bad, they can't do anything, but it can give us this kind of first initial impression. So let's click through those. So you saw the 5.4, and you saw a few others here as well. Sonnet here, 4.6, not doing that great. Either Gemini 3.1, there are a few extra things that are much more coherent. So you've got the bridge actually with the cars over it. Here it does look like a post-apocalyptic disaster a little bit. So these are sort of more coherence-like elements that we look for in these generations. So for example, that's a good example of Minimax 2.5, is that you've got container ships which are about the size of the whole city, and they're going across the land in a kind of incoherent way. So to me, that tells me that there could be some issues in kind of how you could really understand the whole task and work through it in a more coherent way. So Opus here, I mean, it is a little bit funny in terms of the how it goes through the mountains and so on, but the bridge is way more coherent and way more accurate than a lot of the others that we've seen. In here, well, again, many clear issues, but if you compare it to this, you can quite clearly see which one is better. So you see what I mean in terms of the confusion. Like I wouldn't say that, oh, the GPT 5.4 can't do anything, or the oldest one or previous OpenAI models don't work very well. But on these kind of quick tests, it's really hard to really get a really clear view. So SVG generations was another category that was very popular. And again, one of the things that we look for is kind of like coordinate different elements. So in here, this is like cyclists. You've got the wheel off to the side. So you can definitely overtrain on SVGs, as we've seen in a few examples. So it stops being a good test. Ideally, we want tests that are more independent of what the models are being trained on. But there is definitely a way to game it. So we see Gemini 3.1 does feel like it's been specifically trained to do particularly well on SVGs, which I get because, you know, we do tests like these. But still, like, it does give me a little bit of a pause. Like, why is the GPT 5.4 like particularly bad in this case? And it's kind of more comparable to some of the weaker models. But then when we see like Claude Opus 4.6, like it's really high quality generations. Yeah, and GPT 5.2 high here, like not much better. You can see, so 5.2 high versus 5.4 medium, like, okay, the reasoning levels I think is reasonable to argue it's not super fair to compare, but still it does, it's a little bit odd, like why is it like not clear improvements in this direction? And again, doesn't mean to say that there is no value in this. There's perfectly reasonable to say, for example, if you look at the benchmarks that OpenAI have shared, they're saying that GGP eval is much higher. And I think this is quite nicely correlated with the fact that they've done a lot of work in how it works with spreadsheets and documents and presentations, which we are not testing here now, but that is the kind of things that they're pursuing. And if you really work with the documents really well, that influences a lot the GGP eval score that you get, just because of the nature of the benchmark. So if we go back to the generations we were looking at, so this is actually quite nice generation. What we want here is to have coherence of the different elements in here. We want to have just a nice view, and yeah, it's kind of, I would say it's kind of mediocre. I don't think it's quite realistic, but it is something. So, but let me just click through a bunch of these. So this is actually a nice comparison because we've got the same reasoning level here. And yeah, you can definitely argue that there was quite a bit of improvement in that direction. So, but we are kind of 0.4 versions in front. So this is definitely a little bit of improvement there. But yeah, if you look at the Gemini 3.1, even JLM5 here, you can kind of, yeah, Opus especially does feel like on these kinds of tests, we see higher quality generations from some of the others. So these are a few others we can have a look at. So for example, the rocket launch SVG, that's actually quite a nice one. So maybe on that dimension there is quite a bit of improvement. So that's not a bad comparison. For example, to Sonnet 4.6. Sonnet has really nice different elements and probably richer than this, but there's no coordination between different elements. You've got the flame off to the side. Yeah, and if you look at Minimax 2.5 here, it's clearly like looks a lot more basic as well. See, the problem with this one is that all of the rockets fly away before I get to them. So a little bit harder to compare. So another kind of weaker example that I found was that this is meant to be peacock display and feathers. And there are definitely kind of issues with a bunch of them that you can see. But this is a really nice example from Gemini there. But this is GPT 5.4, like not doing super well here. So it's the kind of pattern that we're seeing is that I think at least on the more front-end tasks that we are looking in here, it does feel like some of the coherence, the richness is maybe not quite as strong if you compare it especially to Opus models. But it does feel like there is still noticeable improvement between, for example, this is the GPT-5 medium and this is GPT 5.4 medium. So you can clearly see quite a big jump here. So, but it still feels like, considering how much more compute they're adding, how much investment is going into these, like it does feel like, yeah, maybe some of the improvements are much more noticeable with the more Opus models. Because if you look at, I don't have examples here now, but if you look at between Opus 4.1, for example, to Opus 4.6, the improvements are very, very clear and very visible. So, for example, this generation of Opus 4.6, like really nicely, beautifully done. And then if I find this, yeah, it's not quite at the same level. So again, not the most important thing in the world, but what we really want to try and get to is this kind of quick feel for like where are these models? Like, are they at the same level, or are some more coherent than others, and some can do harder things in one shot, in a kind of starting from scratch. And it does feel like, as I'm looking at these a lot more, I would kind of place it on this class definitely above the previous GPT models, and we'll see. It'll be interesting to see the tests on high and X high, but probably below Opus 4.6. Probably Gemini is a little bit more difficult, because some of the generations from Gemini are really excellent, and some of the others, you like look at it and it does feel a little bit on the lazy side. In terms of these tests, I would also say it does feel like it's above Sonnet 4.6 as well. So the OpenAI models are, I think, from personal use, I think they do have some other advantages of being particularly good at really digging into the model, into your code base, and finding issues and bugs, looking through the logs, working away for 20, 40 minutes. But it will be a lot harder to show you guys how well that performs, because we need a lot of context for this. But here, now we looked at probably 40, 50, 60 generations together side by side. So hopefully it gives you a nice feel for what these models can do.